in one of the corners.
There.
Hey,
Okay.
Dr. Kimberly, it's nice to live.
Well, this is really interesting because we're kind of meshing two shows together. We have on here, Let's Talk About It Tuesday, and what disability language should we use? But we also have a nurse who's a recruiter who recruits other nurses to go to, dispatches them to, we got to talk about language.
Okay.
Language.
Yeah. So I got a phone call, Nurse Brianna, today from a nurse and a social worker to receive some in-home care.
Okay.
It's a new program with the VA, and it's called Direct Care. So if you are a veteran, please check with your social worker or your primary care to see if you qualify for this program. If you are in the Grand Rapids, Kent County area, you would call 616-249-5300, 616-249-5300, and check with your Wyoming CBOT. Yes. So we like acronyms, and we love shameless plugs around here. And so what the program does is that those persons who already receive in-home care can now receive care from a caregiver of their choosing, and it can be a family member. And so the language that the nurse used, she said, so how long have you been wheelchair bound? I'm not bound.
Yes.
And then she says, do you have an electric chair? I said, what?
Electric chair.
I'm just like, Nurse Brianna, help us with this. So as you're recruiting nurses, and at each turn, I'm ma'am, nope, I'm not wheelchair bound. Ma'am, nope, it's not called an electric chair. And then she says, well, handy capable, ma'am, I'm just, well, what do you want us to call you? You can call me doctor. How about that? When I get up on my high horse and toot my own horn here, then you have to call me doctor.
I'm sorry. I think it's challenging, though, as medical professionals try to use the correct verbiage in the workplace. We have lost, some of us, the ability to be sensitive in those conversations with our patients. And it's difficult to transition from one to the next conversation and still be politically correct. And so and what was the preference about the wheelchair? Was it the preference of a motorized wheelchair?
Yeah, well, she asked me, did I use an electric chair? An electric chair is something that you use to kill someone who's committed a crime, and that's been their punishment.
Government sanctioned murder, but that's a different topic. That's a different topic.
Says our county commissioner.
I follow the Pope when it comes to capital punishment, but that's a different topic. But it is, because it really is not politically correct. I'm going to jump there because I'm just going to say, my wife's a social worker, and I always anyways, it's person first. It's dignified language.
Exactly.
Because again, and I get political correctness, but that's an easy excuse to truly look. I mean, what you were starting to talk about, Brianna, of patient care, true empathy. Not, we're not asking you to be a chaplain. We're simply asking you to treat folks. Because I'm just going to say, unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away in May.
I'm sorry.
But man, she had some of the best nurses I have ever encountered who were just fantastic. And as she was slipping away, that's probably not the right technical term. I am not a doctor in any way, shape, or form. As she was transitioning, the nurse would come in and tell her what she was doing. She didn't talk to us, the family members. She talked to my mother-in-law and said, hey, Sue, I'm going to do A, B, and C. That's what's happening now. And that was just beautiful.
Yes.
And so that being said, it's like the conversation with Dr. Kimberly, there probably should be a set of lists. Before we went on the air, I'm sure there's a number of words that you wouldn't want me to refer to the three of you who appear to be female, that I would like, again, I don't even want to pull them out, from the 1950s. And there's probably folks that use them today. There's words related to.
Oh, like gal.
Hey, gals.
I think that is so disrespectful.
And worse. But again, we think they're acceptable. Things that related to African Americans, Hispanics.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, what are relevant? Because it is like asking folks, like, how do you want me to refer to your disability? Well, if it's relevant, I'm a person who uses a wheelchair. I'm not wheelchair bound.
No,
right.
Exactly.
So Empress Bay, all the way from Texas, states that she's only had 2 great nurses out of the 80 that she's had.
Oh, wow, I'm so sorry.
Terrible.
I apologize.
Rihanna, get on that.
No, I apologize as a whole for the nursing profession. If she feels that we have failed her in any way imaginable, I want to apologize for that. And I know I probably wasn't even involved in that, of course, right? So nursing is a passion. It should be a career path for those people who are passionate about caring and truly meeting the needs of individuals, and not of any race or any type of discrimination, but just as one human race. And so that's how I feel a belief of a nurse or anyone of a healthcare professional should approach their career path, with those types of things in mind. And that is truly disheartening for me to hear that type of news, because I know the lengths that I go to make sure that my patients, and now my clinicians, because I'm working as a nurse recruiter, but I can't forget that I was once at the bedside, and everything that it has taught me in my interactions with other people. I'm just so sorry. I'm deeply saddened by that.
Well, on behalf of all of those who have encountered a nurse who was not sensitive, we want to say thank you so much, and we appreciate you taking the time just to even apologize on behalf of, one group of people. But again, it should not be that, well, I'm African American, I have to answer for all African Americans. And, Dave is an Anglo, and Dave has to be responsible, for all of that.
That's called white privilege, Dr. Kimberly. You don't have to apologize. Sorry, we digress. Sorry.
But we do though. But we tell everybody all the time that, at 2 days a week, 2 out of 5, and then that you see, but he and I work very, very closely. And I think that we model what it can look like. Here is the average or the epitome, the definition of what white privilege is. That's Dave Bukowski over there. And then you have me, who is really at the bottom of the rung, because I'm a female, I'm African American, I'm a veteran, and I am disabled, and how we have come together and we really produce something.
You must be a felon because you're in an electric chair. Are you a felon?
Well, I don't like to toot my own horn, but
we got to get serious.
Okay, let's get serious here.
Serious matter. Yeah. I have so many questions, and I'm gonna cut Dr. Kimberly off at the pass, because I don't know if you know this, Brianna, but there's been a pandemic going on for 18 months. I don't know if you've heard about it. COVID-19, something like that.
Closely with it, yes.
Oh my goodness, how has that been just beating up the nursing profession?
It's exhausting, to say the
Talk about
least.
thoughts and prayers and all that to the nurses at the front lines.
Yeah, the best meme, because I am up to date on my memes these days. The best meme, the best
Priorities. We
meme.
all need
Okay,
priorities.
we all
Absolutely.
do. That I've seen this day, and it was very unnerving for me because it's a harsh reality of nursing, and I'm just looking at it from the nursing profession. We have to morph ourselves with every interaction that we have. And the best way that I described it in this meme was, um, they said, and I'm so sorry if I'm trying not to be offensive in this regard, right? But it's just the nature of the meme.
Okay, we'll forgive you in
Exactly.
They
advance.
looked at their watch and, they had a moment of silence. Time of death was 11:59. Have a moment of silence. And then she goes out of the room and into the next room. She has to be like, "Hey, everything looks great. Let's get you out of here." And it's a certain reality that every nurse has to we have to morph, and with every interaction we can go from just pronouncing a patient's death to a complaining patient because their Sprite isn't ice cold, or and there's so many variables, right? There's so many
Oh,
variables.
yeah.
But it's just the harsh reality of every time the nurse has to put on this game face. And how many times can you do that before it truly affects you to your core? And those are long days. We work our 36 hours in 3 days, whereas people can spread that out over 5 days. And then we go home and deal with our families. And so we're human too. And so that's the side that I want to represent, is that we are still human. We have not lost our compassion for what it is that we do. But with COVID and everything that we've had to endure, we are exhausted. Exhausted. We're beat up. A lot of us have post traumatic stress disorder from all of the things that we've had to see and do and endure. And it's very tough. And these are just my own personal struggles that I can't explain to anyone who wasn't there. And I was also a travel nurse. And so being separated from having to leave my family now to go and serve, because that is truly what we are doing. By the time we come back, we still have to serve to our families who have missed us. And, we have this certain level of detachment from work because we've been there, we've been serving, and we feel like we should still be there because we've made the difference while we were there. But then it's time for us to rest and rejuvenate and to go back in it a second and third and fourth wave. I mean, it's just taxing. And so I can't stress enough the importance of wearing your mask and everything else that's going along with it, be it your choice if you choose to get vaccinated or not. Please just protect yourself in every regard, because nurses are tired. We are burnt out. And now that I'm sending these nurses out, we're helping the staff nurses who've been working COVID day in and day out, 60-hour, 70-hour weeks, and they're tired and they make mistakes. Things get lost. We can't be as personable as we would like to be because we just can't operate on all cylinders. And so, again, I still apologize for any lack of professionalism, because we do have a duty to remain professionals. We are healthcare professionals, and so we have to maintain professionalism at all times, but to humanize it and just
Yeah.
to really verbalize what things people have struggled with. And I haven't struggled with nearly as many things as most people because I have a strong support system, but I also had to leave my child at home who was being homeschooled. So we have our struggles and our challenges, and we are really trying to work together and end this pandemic truly.
Well, you have all the way from the UP. Christina says, "Thank you, Brianna, for being a nurse. Hashtag appreciated."
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are gonna make me cry. Should I have brought my tissues? You didn't warn
Yeah,
me.
on this show, you should, because you never know what you're going to talk
You're going to
about.
cry with laughter and cry with
Mm,
unfortunate reality.
yeah.
So how hard is it to recruit nurses today?
That's challenging too, because then you don't really we create a deficit sometimes because the staff nurses are like, well, hey, if I'm out here and I'm working 60 or 70 hours a week already, I might as well get paid for it, right? And so they leave the hospitals, which creates a deficit in our healthcare system, to get paid what they feel like we are truly worth for everything that we've had to sacrifice. And so it's been challenging. I mean, I have to be realistic and say, hey, this may not work for you, or no, this, I can't accept you into this position because, and knowing that another recruiter would, right? But I cannot accept you into this position because we really didn't feel a need for this hospital. We created one. And so we need you to just stay put. We know you're tired. We're coming to help you, but it's a struggle as well to get clinicians to go and do the right thing.
So Vertanji, she is in Detroit. She says, thanks for your work in this season. I appreciate all nurses. And we have Dice Clark.
Thanks.
Salute to all the nurses. Thank you.
Oh, salute. Thank you.
So hopefully we can refresh you emotionally
yes.
around here.
I think that's what I'm doing with this recruiting, right? It's been nice to be home and not have to pack or travel or go anywhere, but I still can make a difference in my own way. And so that's refreshing too for any nurse who may be tired or, burnt out. There's so many ways that you can help and still be nursing. So don't cut yourself short.
All right. We're a little bit at 15 after the hour, and we want to say thank you so much for tuning in today. You are watching Rolling on the Road with Dr. Kimberly and Dave. And we want to say thank you to the Deaf or Hard of Hearing for all the work that they do for us interpreting. We want to say thank you to Disability Advocates of Kent County and 100 Shades of Disability for supporting us in all that it is that we do. And today, as always, we are bringing you frontline news. We really, really are. Can't you see our little ticker tape? We're so cool. So we are excited about our guest. We are talking about, what language should we use when it comes to disability, and how we have nurses who are out there on the front line. And sometimes it might be just a little bit difficult, whether it is, they're scheduling to get someone to come into your home to assist you, or whether it is in the hospital because you have COVID, or maybe you're leaving, or you just had an operation. And I thank you to Miss Brianna Cox, who has taken her time out. She has been on the front line, and now she recruits nurses and helps to assist. We have seen so much, maybe in bits and pieces on television, but we don't really get to see those who are actually doing the work and making it all happen. And while we want to continue to politicize this and say, hey, it's my right, as we have so often said on the show, Dave and I and others collectively, we say, you know what, you get in your car and you don't take the liberty or the right just to run a red light in the middle of traffic, nor do you take the liberty to blow through a stop sign, nor do you take the liberty that, hey, I want to make a right-hand turn and I have the light, but there just happens to be someone in the crosswalk. You don't just take the liberty and run that person down. And so why would you just want to take a liberty and say, I'm not going to mask? Teach your children to be belligerent to adults and take them into courtrooms and talk to elected officials and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to wear no mask. Okay, fine. As we have 3 states right now that are rationing care because they just have so many persons that are in the hospital with COVID, especially our children, and it's just overrun. They're tired. And you have somebody like me that says, I don't use an electric chair and I ain't wheelchair bound.
And not to minimize that, because that is very valid.
It's like, I'm trying to live.
Yeah, that is a very valid point. And again, I think we need to hone in on some of those terms on what we feel should be appropriate so that we can re-educate and tell people that this is what needs to change as it pertains to persons with disabilities and the language that we choose. But we do need to come up with some phrases. So come on, Dr. Kimberly, let's figure out what do you feel like would be acceptable?
Or my favorite one, well, can't you just get up out the chair and walk? Just walk to wherever it is that you need to be. Well, ma'am, if I could do that, I would not be in this chair. But that is a common misnomer that there are some persons that use a wheelchair that are ambulatory. I do have some friends who have cerebral palsy and they have MS, and there are days where their body just They may walk Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and they get up on Thursday, and their body says, "Hey, I am not going to function today."
Mm-hmm.
And you said, "What? Excuse me? You were just walking, 10 hours ago." And your body says, "No." The brain says, I can't compute. Danger, Will Robinson, danger, Will.
And it's those assumptions because I'm laughing because we've been talking a bunch about Dr. Kimberly has helped many years in an event we do. We have a big comedy festival up here, Brianna, on an annual basis called Laugh Fest. And we do an event within that called The Real and the Funny Side of Life with a Disability. And the quick story of one of the comedians, my favorite, is she's like Dr. Kimberly just explained, because of her disability, some days she's exhausted. She has to use a wheelchair. Some days she's with a cane, So one day she's in the liquor aisle at a store and she's in her wheelchair and she gets up and reaches the top shelf. And somebody at the end of the aisle says, "Oh my gosh, it's a miracle." And Megan she goes, "I know, they had my brand." So this idea of, and we assume because, golly jeepers, I could imagine the assumptions that your colleagues that happen to be non-females as nurses, right? It's like, what? How come you're a nurse and you're a guy, right? I mean, is that's still like talk about discrimination, right? Is that still happening out there?
That's still a thing, but I don't think with our generation I think we're a little bit more open-minded to it. And so I think it's starting to become a little bit more acceptable with this generation. But before it was taboo, I agree.
Yeah. It's like we get these weird, these neural ruts, it does not compute. Mm-hmm. And how do you jump out of that? So
as a human race, we like to generalize people, right? We like to group people with our assumptions and our limitations as well. And I think the bigger question is, how do we move away from that? Truly, because we cannot afford to generalize people anymore. There are so many people who are breaking those boundaries and limitations in so many different communities. The transgender community, to be exact. There are so many people now with our generation that things are coming acceptable day and day and day. And so we need to grow with the times as we have done everything else.
Well, Christina says, do you think it's because of ignorance or people becoming numb to our society?
Oh, that's hard because people, as we like complacency too. We like to get comfortable in our little spots and our cozy little nests and have things our way, and we get used to that. So I don't know. I think we are a little bit of both. I think she's onto something. What do you say, Dave?
I mean,
yes, Dave.
It is that, the word that comes to mind is laziness. That is it. Am I tired? Am I lazy? Am I just privileged? That
my nurse said to me today, I have grown complacent because the people that I talk to don't seem to care one way or the other. So she said, it's been a long time since someone has challenged me or held me accountable for what it is that I'm saying and that I'm doing. And I need to make sure, even in my own complacency or feeling overwhelmed, that I definitely need to make sure I go back to basics and use the correct language. She says, you are right.
And then, because the other direction in that conversation too often is that, she just hasn't accepted her disability. She's just angry because she's in a wheelchair, right? I mean, it's this idea of
sometimes
exactly. It's like, no, I'm working for that empathy. However, they don't hear that. Do they hear, you need to use this language? It's like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying treat me with some respect and dignity. Because I'm not bound to this wheelchair. As I like to say when I wax philosophically, without the wheelchair, Dr. Kimberly would be bound to the earth. She's not going anywhere. That wheelchair,
this is true.
To be really politically correct, she's actually wheelchair freed. She's free to live her self-directed life because of those wheels.
Yeah.
And she is out there living it, and so that is politically correct to call it wheelchair freed. Or maybe a wheelchair company's listening in and they're going to steal that and not pay me for that.
You should have.
Well, I doubt it. I did like a 3-hour new wheelchair assessment. And he said, so you ready for your new electric chair? I said, buddy, really?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that we've gone away from electric chair a long time ago, that motorized anything is probably the best response to that. Would you agree?
I do. But you want to know, when he sent a link to their website, and he says, and I want you to compare what we have in comparison to the other wheelchair companies, those that sell them and those who manufacture them. I said, okay, I'll check them all out. Do you know that every last one of them use electric? They use the word electric and not motorized.
Yeah.
But do they say electric wheelchair as opposed to electric chair?
They were interchangeable.
Okay.
Yep. Wow. And the sentencing was interchangeable, because I said, oh my gosh. And nobody is saying anything to you guys. I'm like, do I want to be the one to, stir this hornet's nest? I said, let me get my chair first, and then we'll have them talk about it.
I mean, encourage change, right? Michael Jackson told us a long time ago, and maybe it was before him, to be the change that you want to see in the world. And so, yes, by all means, you have every right, if that makes you uncomfortable, the verbiage, to challenge it and take it all the way up the ladder to their corporate office and beyond until they change it. Yes, I totally agree, because we should not be insensitive. And the minute it's brought to our attention, we should do everything in our power to rectify it. So yes, do that. Be the Rosa Parks.
Well, I like the one that's cute, because I'm definitely not getting up out of my seat. Boy, we just having a great time with this today. It's a good thing. It's a good thing, especially for Tuesday and it's cloudy. But
I keep seeing that sunshine in the back of Brianna's wall there.
I looked out the window like, well, it's a little sunny.
Yeah, it could snow up here any day. No, it's not that cold.
Gosh, no.
It's not that cold. Don't worry.
No, because our air conditioner is on like 10 today. And I'm like, why? But, the other word is that you're so handy capable. It's like, oh, what a good girl. You're just so wonderful. I do that to my dog. Don't call me that.
Now, I'll be honest. So I recently suffered an injury. I was on my second tour in New York, which is what actually sat me down to recruit. And I broke my leg in three places on an electric or motorized scooter. Okay.
Wow.
And I flipped and became the patient. And it's not an easy task knowing, too, what's supposed to be happening on the opposite side. And even with some of the verbiage and things, and when I had to get my handicap placard for the car and and then people having to hold the door, and I'm like doing this to try to get there on crutches, and it was just it was so humbling for sure. But I've been called cripple when the electric the handicap
automatic door opener.
Yeah, when it doesn't work and they have to hold the door for you, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, it's the door for the cripple," and it's like, that's not funny, And so I've never been told handicapable. I don't know how I would receive
it. Because they're handicapable, and yeah.
And it depends on, who knows what, because our good friend Clark Goodrich, who is a local advocate, he has He's been chained to the White House fence, no exaggerations. And one of his favorite title is GIMP. But GIMP stands for Generally Independent, Multi-Talented Person. So he likes GIMP because sometimes people say, oh, you're being gimpy, right? If you're walking with a crutch, and they say it in a negative way. So he flipped it on its head and made it powerful.
Yes. I like
Crippled
that.
is a long acronym. We'd have to write something out for that.
I mean, I did turn a side eye. I did a real
It's like, didn't that go out in 1943?
Exactly.
I mean, Crip Camp is an awesome documentary. Shameless plug for Crip Camp.
Absolutely.
But that, again, it was kind of that inside joke-ish to say this is Crip Camp, as opposed to people saying to Dr. Kimberly, oh, you're in a wheelchair, you should go to Crip Camp. It's like, no.
What?
I still haven't got her to go glamping, but that's another episode, Brianna. He is going to go glamping, but not Crip Camp. So, but it's anytime.
I would definitely go to Crip Camp. Now, when I watched it, I was like, I want to go to Crip Camp. I want that guy right there to pick me up and put me something. Yes.
He had an angle.
Yes. I mean, they just had the most buff guys, because back then they didn't have ramps and they didn't have accessible buses. And so it's like, oh, you're in a wheelchair? Big Buster came and said, I got you. I'm like, oh. I'm not capable. No. Yeah, I mean, but I think that I would have gone to Crip Camp, and I think that I would have felt comfortable. But I think it's just like the N word, where when you're that person of color, you can throw that around and you can say it, but you can't say it. So I think that if they can't say it, none of us should say it. Then it's not a good word for anybody. It's how I do feel about that. It's just not a good word. If everybody can't say it, then nobody needs to use it. How about that? But I don't know how I feel about that. That handy capable makes me feel like this. Like, oh, look at her. She came outside to play, and she even speaks well.
I think we probably could get rid of the handy part of it, right? We could just chop that one off and just say you're capable, and leave it at that.
So Dave, as you're teaching, with Disability Advocates of Kent County, and you go to a corporation and you do, disability decorum training, what words are you giving them to use as it relates to those who have a physical disability and or an imperceivable disability? Do you offer the word handicap, or do you just say, just...
I mean, we don't. I mean, our perspective is person first, in the sense that person with a disability, because we like to say, if you focus on the person, you're going to do way better. After the with is going to change. Person with a handicap, with an impairment, with cancer, with a stroke, or who had a stroke. Anything after the person is going to change as a descriptor, but leading with that person. And that's in the general. But individually, you ask the person, because sometimes person first can feel a bit stretched, like person with blindness. Most of my friends who are blind say, just call me a blind person. That's cool. Or a deaf person with a capital D, deaf, as in deaf culture. So Beth can teach us a lot about that. I mean, that's a whole nother cultural thing, as opposed
to they're not disabled.
A person with deafness, that's a whole nother episode or two. And so again, person first, because again, it comes to language. When you look at handicap, means put your cap in your hand and you're a beggar. That's what it really means. There is no positive way to say you are a beggar. Wow. And we don't use the cap in hand phrase, at least in American English, but in English they use it. If you say your cap is in your hand, that's like for us saying I got my tin cup out and I'm doing some begging. So handicap, and then of course, back to Dr. Kimberly's comment about people in the group, because a handicapper, is somebody who like tells you who's going to win the horse race, and somebody who plays golf has a handicap, and and so it's, and again, that's kind of like at one level, and especially, when you golf with a handicap or bowl with a handicap, you get points. And so people often think of you get something for nothing, because you mentioned your accessible parking permit, Brianna. There is very few things in America that get people's attention quicker than accessible parking. Because everybody wants to park close to that front door. And like, who's worthy of it or not? And
well, did you see it in the news? It was last week. There was a mother who took her son, who is a wheelchair user. He has cerebral palsy, and he's probably low on the spectrum. And they went to Disney. And so they have a side door for him to come out of. And they didn't have any more parking spaces left. So when they asked Disney how and where should they park, they gave them a sticker, told them they could take up 2 spots. So just come over enough on the next parking spot with 1 tire that will give you that space that, you get. Because most people don't understand that even within the handicap parking, if you are ambulatory, you're not to park in the one that is for van accessible, because you need that space to be able to open the door and come out, whether you're in your manual chair or your motorized chair, to be able to get out. And that's the purpose of the striping, is to give you that extra space. So they gave them a note and told them to come over the white line a little bit so that nobody else would be able to come in and park. And then that way they had enough room to let the ramp down. She says that another guest wrote the nastiest note to her for taking up 2 parking spots. And she said when she got back to the car and saw it, she says, I just wanted to cry. And it's like the person didn't take the time to see that they had an authorization from Disney to be able to take that extra spot, because all the other spots had already been taken. They have a special lot, for those who need wheelchair accessibility, for them to be able to park, along with others who have a regular handicap sticker to park as well. But she just said, I can't believe the insensitivity of, we're all parking in the same space.
And then it's obviously the stereotypes, because a similar thing happened here in Grand Rapids at the YMCA. There happens to be a person who uses a wheelchair who also drives a really nice convertible. And he parked it at the YMCA, and somebody didn't take the time to notice that his license plate had the little wheelie guy on it. And they wrote him a nasty note too about being a donkey of some variety for parking in the handicapped spot. And it's like, no. And so this stereotype, because I know Dr. Kimberly gets the stink eye sometimes because she drives a very nice vehicle, and it's like, what are you doing in that really nice vehicle?
I mean, to say that people are limited to minivans because you have
ugly old minivans.
Right.
I got a minivan. And
I'm sorry. I'm thinking again.
I'm ready for my disability. I got an ugly old minivan, Dr. Kimberly.
But I mean, I think people, that goes back to our old, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And that goes for letters, love notes, tips, whatever, and people are just letting their true selves and their true ignorance come out and let it be seen by the world. And it's distasteful for starters, right? It's very offensive to those people who are just doing what they can to be able to move around. And it's nobody's business if I took up two parking spaces for any reason at all. And I shouldn't have to be subjected to your nasty verbiage in any form that it comes because I'm living my life, and I'm sorry that you get the stank eye too because you have a nice car. I do want to see what kind of car you have now though, but
I mean, we had, speaking of the why, we were doing a training, took a group of great folks through so that they could see how wonderful the facility was set up for persons with all types of disabilities, whether it was cognitive, physical, mental, emotional. I mean, the facility is just great. And so after we talked about languaging, we talked about decorum, and everyone was just, wow, so enlightened, wanted to give money. Everybody was excited. And so the first thing they did is, can we push you out, Dr. Kimberly? Oh, absolutely. So which bus is yours? I said, what do you mean, a bus? Because we have a paratransit system for persons with disabilities, and it's called the Go Bus. So there were some Go buses that were waiting. I said, oh, I'm not on the bus. I said, I'm over there. And so they said, well, we would love to push you to your car. And they rolled past a van. Is this you? No. Well, did someone drive you? I said, no. So they kept going. How far down? And so we're just going to go a little bit further. And when they got to my car, they used a few superlatives and was like, whoa, why and how are you in this? This looks better than what we're driving. And how does somebody like you get something like this? And I said, did we just not come out of training? I mean, but there's been several incidences, where Dave and I have had functions that we go to. And, I thought the one that was really cute to me was we come out of the restaurant and there were a few folks standing around trying to decide among themselves whether they should assist the lady that just came out in the wheelchair. Well, do we ask her? As if I couldn't hear them, but they were saying, okay, so are we supposed to help her? Do we push her? Do we ask her? What's the protocol? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. But I came out with a disability advocate staffer. And so she says, well, Dr. Kimberly, it was great to see you. So then they were like, oh, doctor. And then my tag on my car says Dr. Kim K. So then they were really confused and they were like, wait a minute, she in the wheelchair is in that? And she's got the personalized tag? And they're like, well, what the F, man? We're not helping her. I mean, what does she need us for if she's driving that and has a personalized tag? And so, I get over there, get in the car, and I just very politely, I had on Bach. That's what was playing on my Sirius, I let all the windows down along with the sunroof, and I back all the way up, and I turn and I look at them. You guys have a great evening. And by the way, it's always just polite just to ask. And I would have said, yes, you could push me to my car. And I tooted the horn and rolled off.
And they will remember that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, because they were just like, one, offended that an African American is driving a Range Rover and they in a wheelchair. No, that's just too much going on right there. But it shouldn't really matter. I mean, I saw a really great guy with a nice suit pull up next to me, had a meeting to go to. I was going to the same meeting and I was like, oh, that is a nice BMW. I was like, oh my God, I love the color. The style. I said, well, I hadn't seen this version before, because, I know a BMW. I said, it wasn't a C-Class. It wasn't, I just was like, what is this one? And he very politely leans over and snatches his wheelchair out and puts it together, use his transfer board, and gets out in his wheelchair and goes click, click. And I'm like, as I'm getting out mine, I'm going click, click too. And we're like, hey. And so we looked at each other and said, we're just setting a whole new standard for this wheelchair thing. And he goes, I think that we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's I got to look this up because I took a picture for my son who enjoys, what are those things called? Expensive cars.
Uh-huh.
And I had lunch with a friend who does well in business, and keep talking amongst yourselves. I'll find this picture. I can't remember the kind of car it was. And we
want to say hello to Shayna, who is tuning in all the way from Bel Air, Maryland. Hey, Shayna, she says hello. I don't know if you're just joining us. We were having a great conversation, Shayna. I'm sure you have some comments about using language as it relates to persons with disabilities. And our guest today has been Miss Brianna Cox, who is a registered nurse recruiter now, who has been deploying nurses all over the country to assist with COVID. And can you believe it? Look what time it is. Ooh. It is 1:45.
Time flies.
I know. Dave, you catching the bus today?
Not today. I've got my old minivan in the parking lot. I've got my old minivan without an accessible parking placard. You know?
Hey, that minivan has been over the highways. We have been to the Capitol. I mean, if we could had a chance to see the president, we would have done that too.
Okay.
In the minivan. It's roadworthy.
It is.
I got it. Yeah. Because I looked up the picture. My good friend, business guy, and by the way, also happens to use a wheelchair. He's driving around in a Maserati. Exactly. I mean, live your life. Live your life. Exactly.
Setting new standards.
Exactly. As another good friend says, if you got it, flaunt it.
Hey.
I'm just saying.
I love it. But I mean, this is how you normalize things, right? And so, we're getting away from stigmas and stereotypes and all of these things that are negatively surrounded around having a disability. And we are normalizing fancy cars and flashy clothes and everything, normal jobs. And there was a nurse that is in a wheelchair. Because see, there I am trying to use the healthcare term of wheelchair bound. And so, do we find a replacement for that one yet?
Just a wheelchair user.
It's wheelchair user.
Okay.
Wheelchair user.
A wheelchair user. And she has been, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about her. I don't know what her.
She's called the rolling nurse, I think. Is that her?
I think so. Because
if it's the one that we're talking about, she's called the rolling nurse. And she's on Instagram, and I would love to get her on the show. But yep, she's called the rolling nurse on Instagram.
There was one too I thought was the seated nurse. Because she was able to go and she was deployed. She worked through COVID. They were able to let her.
Maybe that's her. You know what? Let me look it up on.
I know I was trying to look it up now. Sorry, but she.
Shayna says she admires her too. I think that's her. She's either the rolling nurse or the seated nurse. Let me go back. Let's see. She is.
Nurse is the one I'm thinking. Andrea Dalzell, maybe. Oh, she's a beautiful girl. I'm going to show her picture in my camera here. Can you guys see her?
I think that's the seated nurse.
Seated nurse. She's a beautiful girl. And I'm not sure exactly her story. But I mean, oh yes, if you could get her, I'm sure she would do that. But she has been very verbal about her challenges as it pertains to obtaining a job as a nurse, as a seated nurse. And she's, we need to come up with verbiage as well. She's, all about that, advocating for new terms of endearment as it pertains to people with disabilities. Because, even as you said earlier, gal, their generations are moving on, and what we thought was just taboo in the past has now become more acceptable. And terms of endearment are constantly evolving as well. And so we just need to
Mm-hmm.
get some of those positive ones out there as it pertains to wheelchair users and persons with disabilities so that we can just normalize these conversations and terms, and they're not so offensive, and they don't hurt as at all. It shouldn't hurt at all to have a conversation with someone who has a disability. It should not. And I think she would be an excellent person that could come and speak to her experience and exposure, even as a professional working through COVID, but as a seated professional. Um, Amazing.
I think yeah, she is. We're talking about the same person. She's called the seated nurse, is what she calls herself. And I have been watching her for a while, and I'm like, wow, yeah.
Her story is
She right there.
yes. Oh my God. And her spirit, her energy is so amazing. She's a beautiful person inside and out. And so are you, Dr. Kimberly. Just for me
Thank
meeting you
you.
today and just having the sense of humor and personality that you have, I love it. And Dave, I'm not counting you out either. I love the energy on this platform is amazing. Thank you guys so much for having
Well,
me.
thank you. And when you find some extra nurses, send them up to Marquette up in the UP. They need them.
Noted. Marquette's going on the list as well as the Laugh Fest. You told me about the comedy. I like comedy, so I'm
Laugh Fest. Head to our YouTube. You'll see Dr. Kimberly there. Many years running.
Yeah, I think they even last year was it in 20? Yeah, seems like that was
2020 because we missed 21. I mean, they just did a smaller virtual one. We were like one of their last events. Unfortunately, that was Wednesday, March 11th. I got a great memory for worthless information. Wednesday, March 11th, and then Friday the 13th. That's when they shut down for COVID of 2020. And so, anyways, but we had fun. We're going to keep having fun. But that's kind of our perspective on life. That you've got to take it seriously. At the same time, you got to laugh. There's times to cry. There's times to laugh. Somebody said that in some book somewhere. There's a time for everything. I can't remember who said that.
Well, if you're at a loss, they do say it in Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes. Some would say Kohelet. But we digress.
Somewhere
and Ecclesiastes, there's a time and a season to every
season.
So we are just so excited. So we want to say thank you so much for tuning into Rolling on the Road with Dr. Kimberly and Dave. Of course, everybody knows where we were today. We were in our southeast location down there in Georgia. And we want to say thank you so much to Miss Brianna Cox for coming on today. And we look forward to staying in touch with you and seeing what's going on and helping us, some more with that language. And, not only are we asking for a reprieve, but guess what? I think that we need to give some of our frontline workers a reprieve as well. And if you have not been vaccinated, please choose to get that shot in the arm. If you're not able to, we definitely understand, but mask up, do your duty, mask up. And we just greatly appreciate if you would do that. We've heard so many stories, but we actually had someone here who is talking about the number of hours and that people are tired. They have families, they have other responsibilities, and I cannot even imagine going in one room and pronouncing death and then going in another room to bring someone a Sprite that's just not quite cold enough, it was too tepid for them, and then remember that Mr. Brown over here, oh my gosh, he's gonna need his insulin shot. And that's a lot. And to know that I still have children at home or a husband or a mom or someone else that I'm caring for along with caring for myself. So please, I implore you, do your part. This is not about politics. It's about people.
Yes.
It's about people, and their very lives are just hanging in the balance, and they need truth. and they need the light. So please be the truth and be the light for them. And we'll see you on tomorrow, same time, same station, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our guests will be in Detroit on Wednesday with Miss Fertanji, who is a regular viewer and who has a son who has autism. And she has helped her son to write several books. And they're going to be working with Mr. Dice Clark on this coming Saturday. They are hosting a game day for persons with disabilities and their families, for them to come and just enjoy a fun day. And that will be in Detroit. So they'll be here tomorrow to tell you what they're going to do. And then we're excited that on Thursday, we have our guest for Thursday. Thumbs up? Yes. So we're going to talk about employment. Yes, for persons with disabilities. So we're excited.
And the whole mask mandates and vaccine mandates from employers. So guests from the Employers Association will be joining us.
So we got some great stuff the rest of the week. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we're only putting a comma, not a period. And we will speak soon.
Thank you guys for having me.
You're so welcome.
We appreciate you taking the time out.